Commander Jasmin Moghbeli and pilot Andreas Mogensen, just monitoring the spacecraft's progress.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop. Ground has pulled go for approach 0 and 1 and will enable the maneuver shortly.
SpaceX Dragon copies go for approach 0 and 1.
And those words confirming that we are good to continue the approach to the International Space Station, and we'll pass through waypoint 0. Again, we expect that waypoint 0 mark to come at about 5:17 a.m. Pacific, so about 12 minutes from now. Again, they will not pause there. They will go to pass through to waypoint 1. That's about 220 meters away from the International Space Station. This view again from inside Dragon, crew monitoring as Dragon flies autonomously to the International Space Station, continuing to get closer and closer. That approach initiation burn brought us up about 400 meters directly below the station. We are now about 686 meters from the station, or about 0.4 miles. So getting closer and closer, again, looking for docking at 9:05 a.m. Eastern, 6:05 a.m. Pacific, so almost exactly an hour from now.
And we did see views of the International Space Station before, which looked like a tiny little dot, and now we are getting so close that you can really see the International Space Station there, and that's on your left-hand screen. And looking from the International Space Station to Dragon on your right-hand screen, getting a really cool view of Dragon.
And you see that glow. That is the spacecraft are both going into an orbital daytime. So we've talked about how the at orbital velocity, you're orbiting the Earth 17,500 miles per hour. You see a sunrise or a sunset every 45 minutes. So they're going into that sunrise period. That's why you saw that glow, that blooming on the camera. They will be there again for about 45 minutes. It does look like we may dock just as we get into an orbital nighttime. But again, this view on your right-hand side of the screen, the Dragon capsule itself, and then its destination on the left, the International Space Station, both have eyes on each other. And we are in the big loop, as we talked about earlier, meaning they can all communicate on the same communication network.
And we did get a go for approaching waypoint 0 as well as waypoint 1. We're just about 10 minutes away from the expected time of arrival at waypoint 0. And again, this is just a checkpoint. They do not need to stop. They can continue to pass through waypoint 0 and move to waypoint 1, which will swing it up and out in front of the space station. And it'll pause at a distance of approximately 220 meters away from the station.
Now, right now, as we speak, the International Space Station has just started flying over the state of Washington. It's about to fly directly over Seattle. So if you're in the area, it is about to cross over into Canada as well. So if you're in that area near that border, go outside, maybe look up. You can always check out spotthestation.nasa.gov to see when it'll fly over you. But it is going to pass over the continental U.S. Right now. It's flying right over the state of Washington. So I'm sure if they looked down right now, would have beautiful views of the mountain ranges there. It'll be south of Calgary here pretty shortly.
And as you mentioned earlier, you don't need a telescope to see the International Space Station. You can actually see it with the naked eye. It's about the size of a football field and big enough for you to walk outside and be able to see it pass by.
And I know they can't see me, but I always wave.
Hey, you never know.
So again, things still progressing pretty smoothly this morning. Next milestone being that they will pass through, will not stop at waypoint 0, less than 8 minutes from now. And a reminder, we are going to the zenith, or the space-facing port of the International Space Station today. They will be next-door neighbors with Dragon Endeavour, which is at the forward-facing port on Node 2. And right now on the International Space Station, we have 7 crew members. So we are going to have 11 people living and working on the orbiting laboratory for the next several days. We'll start looking at an undocking timeline and a splashdown date for Crew 6 pretty soon. But we want to make sure they get that handover time. So right now, again, 7 people living on the space station. Right now, it looks like 4 of them are having their midday meal. So on the space station, they use Greenwich Mean Time. It's just a little bit after noon there, about 12:10 p.m. A few of them are eating. Again, this is a weekend day, so technically, sometimes if there's not operations going on, they do get time off on the weekends. They're able to relax, talk to family members. Right now, several of them are eating, and then Woody Hoberg will step into the Dragon approach monitoring. He will also work on pressurizing the vestibule once we are docked.
And on your screen is a pretty cool view from the International Space Station looking at Dragon. You could see the nose cone deployed, and you can also see some of the thrusters. They're using the Draco thrusters to maneuver Dragon towards the International Space Station. You can see Earth in the background.
Yeah, right now they are flying over Saskatchewan, so south of Saskatoon. That's the view below Dragon there. And then Dragon's view of the International Space Station. So if you're in that area, go take a look up. You might spot our crew members. Again, less than an hour away from docking now. It will bring that crew up to 7 people.
And we are about 5 minutes from reaching waypoint 0. Expected time is 5:17 a.m. Pacific time.
So during that crew handover period, when we talked about, these 11 crew members on the International Space Station, we have Crew 6. That consists of Stephen Bowen, Woody Hoberg, Sultan Al-Nayati, and Andrei Fedyayev. They have been living up there for about 6 months now. And before we bring them home, we want them to be able to talk to Crew 7. We have some first-time flyers, especially on this spacecraft. So we want them to be able to show them the ropes of what's going on aboard the International Space Station. They can hand over any science experiments that they've been working on, show them any of the safety protocols. That's actually one of the very first things that they will do right after they dock. They will move into an ISS safety briefing. They get a lot of training on the ground about how to handle any contingencies or off-nominal situations, but once you get in space, it's just different. You need to do it again. You need the refresher. So it's, safety is the utmost importance. So that's the first thing that they'll do after they dock and do their welcoming ceremony for us. But that crew handover period, it gives a nice buffer for these team members to be able to share what's been happening on the International Space Station over the last 6 months with this crew who has just arrived. This view from another camera on the International Space Station. Again, this station right now is about 262 statute miles over Earth, actually flying over Ontario at this point. It's moving pretty fast. Just a couple minutes ago, it was flying over Washington State. We're now all the way over Ontario, so 17,500 miles an hour. That is about 5 miles per second. Quite speedy.
And speed is relative, so it doesn't look that fast on your screen, but
We are just a few minutes now from passing through waypoint 0. And we expect to pass through waypoint 1 as well. That'll be about 25 minutes following our pass through waypoint 0. Again, these are points built into the docking process. That way, if we needed to hold at these, we definitely can. It's a great opportunity to check out any systems, but the teams here in Hawthorne as well as in Houston have pulled go. They're not tracking any issues that would preclude us from a safe docking. Again, looking at that coming up at about 6:05 a.m. Pacific. And our Cronus flight controller in Houston is the one who is navigating these cameras on the International Space Station. So they always do a great job of getting us some really amazing views as Dragon gets closer.
Again, just as a reminder, waypoint 0 will mean that Dragon is 400 meters directly below station, and as it maneuvers to waypoint 1, that is basically swinging the vehicle to out in front of the station. It will be approximately 220 meters away from station. And that is coming up here in just about 2 minutes from now. We're reaching waypoint 0 is coming up in about 2 minutes.
And waypoint 1 puts us on the docking axis, so it pretty much lines us directly up with that corridor that the spacecraft will follow all the way in to where it docks on the zenith port of the International Space Station. There is a pause at waypoint 2. That's about 20 meters away, so that is kind of the final check of all the systems on both sides of the spacecrafts to make sure that everyone's still go for docking. We're not tracking any major issues. They can hold there for any lighting changes if they wanted to, but not always necessary. So sometimes it's a brief pause, and sometimes they just hold to make sure that everything is checking out as planned.
And you did just see a view inside of the cabin of Dragon, and you saw our astronauts, our commander and pilot there, basically just monitoring. Dragon is an autonomous vehicle, so really all the crew needs to do is just monitor as they approach the station. There's really no manual driving or flying at this point.
This gives you a great view with the nose cone open. That's where the docking mechanism is located. That's the hatch through which these astronauts will fly through Dragon and into the International Space Station. Of course, yesterday during launch, we saw them enter through the side hatch. They won't use that again until they splash down and are back on Earth and egress on the recovery ship. So, we just got confirmation. We have arrived at waypoint 0. We are converging trajectory on waypoint 1. So again, things continuing to move smoothly. We'll start to get a different view of the International Space Station as we're going to be going to the zenith port. So we're going to be going directly above it. We'll be looking down on the space station. So that view we have right now of the space station looking down on Dragon, it'll be flip-flopped. So Dragon will be looking down on the space station and see Earth below that. So again, we've just reached waypoint 0, which means Dragon is 400 meters directly below station. And we can see it in views now coming from the International Space Station. But coming up, Dragon will move from waypoint 0 to waypoint 1. That'll swing it up and out in front of the space station, actually directly above it, pausing at a distance of approximately 220 meters. Again, that puts us on the docking axis. That essentially means it's directly in front of the docking port. And again, we've heard teams do the go, no go polls. Everything remains go for us this morning. So again, coming up next, we will see
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop. Approach 0 has started and the trajectory has converged on waypoint 1. Expect arrival at waypoint 1 around 1259er UTC.
SpaceX Dragon copies on the big loop, arrival at waypoint 1 at 1259er.
And just the core communicating with the crew, confirming that they are on their way to waypoint 1. Now, this maneuver from waypoint 0 to waypoint 1 is coming up in just about 30 minutes from now. So we do have some time as this maneuver happens. This is a slow and steady process. Again, we are traveling at 17,500 miles per hour, but the process is slow and steady as we pass through each one of these checkpoints to make sure that we can monitor everything that's happening and make sure that the vehicle is safe, the crew is safe, as well as the International Space Station is also safe before we begin docking with the space station.
we were just talking about what's underneath the nose cone. So obviously the docking port, but we also have those forward bulkhead thrusters. We use those for some of the larger burns. We also have the service section Draco thrusters. Those are positioned around the spacecraft. We'll just be using those service section Dracos as we get closer to the International Space Station. Again, very fine-tuned. And this, I just noticed, is very cool. On the left side of your screen, up a little, if you're looking towards the top of the International Space Station or towards the top of your screen, you can see Dragon Endeavour docked to that forward-facing port. Again, we are going to the Zenith port, so you can see that outline perfectly. That's so fascinating. You can also see some of those International Space Station rollout solar arrays, those IROSAs. If you look towards the right side, you know, they look like they are a little bit detached, sort of. They are mounted differently on our solar arrays. Again, we have passed through waypoint 0, heading up to waypoint 1. International Space Station looking especially beautiful this morning. And we are in that orbital daytime. We are now flying over the Atlantic Ocean, so we have at this point passed over the continental US, North America.
And on your left-hand screen is a view inside of Dragon. On your left-hand side is Commander Jasmin Moghbeli, and on your right-hand side is the pilot for this mission, Andreas Mogensen. Again, they are just monitoring. They are able to confirm, you know, on their displays that what they see matches what we see here in mission control as they make their way to docking to the International Space Station. And these views are really awesome. Seeing Earth in the background, looking almost so crisp there.
I know. And Crew 7, once they arrive at the International Space Station, they will have these beautiful views for about 6 months, living and working, doing science and research on the International Space Station. We did get an updated docking time. It has shifted just a few minutes to the right. We're now tracking 9:08 a.m. Eastern time. Literally just a 3-minute change, so just fine-tuning after we've done the approach initiation burn and that mid-course maneuver. Again, we've passed through waypoint 0, moving up toward waypoint 1. Things continue to look good so far for Dragon Endurance on its journey to the International Space Station. And the astronauts, the first crew to fly on a spacecraft, have the opportunity to name it. And so the first flight of Endurance was the Crew 3 mission. It was named Endurance by the astronauts themselves, obviously. They said it's a tribute to the tenacity of the human spirit as we push farther than ever with commercial opportunities in low Earth orbit and plans to go to the moon and Mars. So common theme.
Awesome. We're seeing another view from the International Space Station. Looking.
Yeah, if you look closely, there's Dragon in the center there. Again, our Cronus flight controller tracking these views for us in Mission Control Houston.
Thank you, Cronus. And as a reminder, as Dragon approached waypoint 0, was directly under the International Space Station. As it moves to waypoint 1, it's actually going to swing up and align itself with the space station. So you no longer will be looking down from the space station and have that view of Earth in the background, because it will be aligned with the docking port, which is the zenith port today. It's the space-facing side of the International Space Station.
Once our astronauts arrive and our cosmonaut arrive to the International Space Station today, they will be members of Expedition 69. That will remain their designation, so they won't keep these roles, these titles that they have right now. You know, we have Jasmin Moghbeli as our commander. Once she gets to the International Space Station, she will be a flight engineer, and they will remain Expedition 69 until departure of Soyuz next month. That'll be bringing Frank Rubio home. That is when we will enter Expedition 70. So their titles will change over at that point to Expedition 70 crew members. We're about 25 minutes until we expect to reach waypoint 1. Sorry, about 35 minutes, I believe. Again, that's that 220 meter. It can be used as a hold point. I don't think we intend to use it as a hold point today, but it is on the docking axis. It'll be directly above the International Space Station, directly above that zenith port on node 2. All right, and a reminder, we are taking your questions on X with the hashtag AskNASA. We have one from Sahid asking if there are any problems with docking if they are on the dark side of the Earth, which it does happen several times a day. We see that happen about every 45, 90 minutes, or sorry, a sunrise, sunset every 45 minutes. And do they face visibility issues? So Dragon is fully autonomous. It uses LiDAR to track the International Space Station and to line up with that docking port. The crew members do have the opportunity to take control if needed, but they don't necessarily need to wait for that lighting. The Dragon knows where the station's docking port is, and we have lights out on the exterior of the International Space Station anyway. So sometimes we do hold for lighting just to double confirm, just to make sure, but there is usually no problem docking in darkness.
Yeah, I believe it's actually more of a problem when it's too bright. So when it's too bright, they do take a pause and wait for it to get a little bit darker, just to make sure that, again, because this is an autonomous vehicle, make sure that the Dragon spacecraft can actually see the International Space Station. And we are taking questions on X with the hashtag AskNASA. And this one is, where can I see the post-launch news conference from yesterday? And also, you're doing a good job. Good job,
Thank you
Leah.
so much. Good job, Jesse. Thank you so much. You can find the post-launch news conference on NASA's YouTube. They did a great job breaking down the ascent and what it looks like for this rendezvous profile. So if you want to go back, take a look at NASA's YouTube, you can search for the Crew 7 post-launch news conference, and it should come right up. Next question is, when will Crew 7 be back to Earth?
Well, these are long-duration rotational missions, but the durations are approximately 6 months. So every 6 months, we fly a crew up to the International Space Station, and the crew on board will then return back home. So Crew 7 will be up there for about 6 months and come back.
We're starting to see the views change a little bit. You know, we were looking directly down on Dragon, but now we are swinging up and above the International Space Station, because we'll be docking to that zenith port. So again, like I mentioned earlier, we were looking directly down on Dragon with the Earth below it. Pretty soon, Dragon will be looking directly down on the International Space Station with the Earth below it. Looks like right now they are flying off the west coast of Senegal, about 260 statute miles above Earth.
And if you're just now joining us, you are tuned in to the Crew 7 mission. The crew launched last night at 12:27 a.m. Eastern Time. 12:27 a.m. Pacific Time, 3:27 a.m. Eastern Time. And now the crew is making their way to the International Space Station. We've already had a few burns. We've passed through checkpoint waypoint 0, and now the vehicle is swinging up towards waypoint 1. We are just under 25 minutes away from the expected time of arrival to waypoint 1, which will put the vehicle in line with the docking adapter on the International Space Station, and also put the vehicle directly above the International Space Station.
So if you're tracking, that's an almost 30-hour ride to orbit. The crew are suited up now. They are in their seats. They have not had to do so during the flight, and we just got a really cool view of one of those Draco thrusters firing, helping us fine-tune our approach to the space station. Our 4 crew members arriving today: Jasmin Moghbeli, Andreas Mogensen, Satoshi Furukawa, and Konstantin Borisov. Dragon looks pretty small in this picture, but we are getting closer and closer to the International Space Station. Waypoint 1 is our next really milestone. That'll be 220 meters directly above the station. We'll pass through that, head to waypoint 2, which is a hold point. It can be a brief pause. That's 20 meters away from the docking port. And once the astronauts arrive, they will be joining a crew of already 7 people living on the International Space Station, so bringing that total up to 11. The other astronauts and cosmonauts living on the station right now are Stephen Bowen, Woody Hoberg, Sultan Al-Nayati, Andrei Fedyaev, Frank Rubio, Sergei Prokopyev, and Dmitry Petelin.
And we just had a view from the International Space Station looking at Dragon from a bit further away. And now we've got a very good close-up as Dragon gets closer and closer to the International Space Station.
Yeah, looking crystal clear. Again, that nose cone is open. Of course, when we launch, it is closed. And when we re-enter its atmosphere, it's closed to protect that docking mechanism that's beneath it. So that's exactly the point that'll line up with that zenith port on the International Space Station. It'll dock. The teams on the space station will take some time to make sure they pressurize the vestibule. That's the space between the Dragon hatch and the space station hatch. So when Dragon docks, that space is going to be out of vacuum. It's been previously exposed to outer space. And we want to make sure that it's equalized before we open up those hatches and the crew floats in. So that is a process that takes about an hour-ish, you know, making sure that we've got all those levels equaled out before we welcome the crew aboard the space station. Yeah, this is another view from the International Space Station. You can see one of the robotic arms on the left, and close to center of your screen, that is Dragon. And that robotic arm is attached to the Japan exposed facility, so we are able to put some of our experiments outside in the vacuum of space. Again, we are about 23, 22 minutes away from waypoint 1, reaching waypoint 1. Can be used as a hold point. We do not anticipate doing so today. We're heading to the zenith port of the space station on node 2, and it'll continue flying in. It'll be on that docking corridor until it's about 20 meters away. And we are looking for docking today at 9:08 a.m. Eastern Time, 6:08 a.m. Pacific Time. And this again is Dragon Endurance that we're looking at. It flew first on the Crew 3 mission. It also flew the Crew 5 astronauts to the International Space Station.
Dragon SpaceX on the Big Loop. Expect reconfiguration of the C2V2 return link shortly.
SpaceX Dragon passes on the Big Loop.
And a reminder, we are taking your questions on X with the hashtag AskNASA. So if there's something you're curious about, let us know. This question from Jack: what have the astronauts been doing in between launch and docking?
Well, they've been floating around a bit. But they have had some rest periods, some meal periods. You know, they're able to eat while they're in microgravity as they're making their way to the International Space Station. After ascent, once they made it to orbit, they were able to get out of their spacesuits and actually enjoy microgravity. And they've also, you know, needed to follow some procedures. As we're getting closer and closer to the International Space Station, they did have to prepare for some of the burns that enable the Dragon vehicle to get or to approach the International Space Station. So a plethora of activities over the past 30 hours.
Yeah, they also get the opportunity to eat if they want to. They have some shelf-stable meals that they can choose from, and you'll probably hear after docking, they will report out what was consumed. Not necessarily the food itself, but they'll say this many packets from this bag. Everything is so meticulously tracked in space and on the International Space Station. It can be difficult. You know, it's not the same as here on Earth. If I put something down on the table, I know it's going to stay there thanks to gravity. But on the International Space Station, we want to make sure we know where everything is at all times, because it can float away pretty easily. So just reporting also what was consumed, that gives the teams here in Hawthorne as well as in Houston a good look at, you know, what is also available for later use as well.
Yeah, and on the broadcast for the launch of Crew 7, NASA astronaut Jessica Meir actually mentioned, you know, how good the meals ready to eat actually are. She really gave an ode to, you know, how cool it is to be able to bring, you know, some flavors from, you know, some of the astronauts' like favorite types of food with them to the International Space Station. On Dragon, they aren't able to heat up any of the food, but they are able to hydrate any dehydrated food while on Dragon. And then once they get to the International Space Station, they actually do have the ability to warm up food and have a hot meal. And we do have another question. Again, as a reminder, we are taking questions on X with the hashtag AskNASA. Do the astronauts stay in that seated position the entire trip there? So for Crew 7, that would be for 30 hours.
Yeah. No, that doesn't sound super comfortable, and thankfully they don't have to. So like we talked about, you know, after they get on orbit, after they're out of that dynamic period of flight, the nose cone is opened, they get a call from the Corps here in Hawthorne that they can get out of their seats as well as their suits. So they're able to take their suits off and kind of be in their own comfortable clothing, whatever they've worn underneath. We ask them to put those back on shortly before we get into this approach initiation phase. So they are back in their suits right now. They are also in their seats. Of course, we don't expect anything to be off nominal in this situation, and we are moving pretty slowly, but it's still considered a dynamic period of flight because we're getting closer to the International Space Station and docking itself. We are about 15 minutes from waypoint 1. Again, our next pit stop on the way to the space station, about 220 meters above the Node 2 Zenith docking port.
And Dragon SpaceX on the big loop. C2V2 link reconfiguration is complete. Could you give us a quick comm check?
SpaceX Dragon, time check on the big loop.
We have you 5x5.
Have you seen?
Hearing that conversation between the Corps and the crew, that is Shiva Bharavaj down there in Mission Control, Hawthorne. And they were talking about C2V2, that's Common Communications for Visiting Vehicles. So the Dragon spacecraft and International Space Station both use this language essentially to talk with each other, and it is properly configured so they continue to have good communication between both of those spacecraft. So currently on board the International Space Station, judging by the timeline, it looks like Woody Hoberg is now in position monitoring Dragon's approach. They can actually send commands from Dragon or from the International Space Station to Dragon if need be, if there was some reason that we needed the spacecraft to retreat. Obviously, we're not tracking anything this morning, but he'll be monitoring that approach as they get closer all the way through docking, and then he'll be the person to work through the depressurization of the vestibule and make it a welcoming transition from Dragon to the space station for the 4 new crew members.
And we are currently maneuvering from waypoint 0 to waypoint 1. We are expecting to arrive at the waypoint 1 checkpoint at 5:59 a.m. Pacific time. And again, this will put Dragon directly above the International Space Station. So you could see on your screen, Dragon made its way to waypoint 0, which was directly under the International Space Station, so between Earth and the International Space Station. And now it is swinging upwards and will be above the International Space Station, basically on the space side of the station. And again, we are expecting that arrival at waypoint 1 at 5:59 a.m. Pacific time.
And we got the go from the International Space Station team that they are good to have Dragon proceed past waypoint 1. So waypoint 1, they will stop at waypoint 2 again. That's about 20 meters from the space station. That's the final checkpoint before moving in. And we expect to see them at waypoint 1 in about 12 minutes from now. Shortly after that, it moves pretty quickly. It is slow and steady, but at the same time, we're anticipating docking at 6:08 a.m. Pacific. That is 9:08 a.m. Eastern time. So just about 30 minutes from now, we should see our new crew arrive at the space station. Of course, if we needed to, we can hold at waypoint 2 for quite a while, just to make sure we have conditions on the spacecraft, on the International Space Station, any lighting conditions, just the way we want them before we move on in.
And just to recap some of our milestones, we had an approach initiation burn at 4:29 a.m. Pacific time. That's 7:29 p.m. a.m. Eastern time. As well as we did require an approach initiation mid-course maneuver, which happened at 4:56 a.m. Pacific time, 7:56 a.m. Eastern time. And again, we've passed through waypoint 0. We're on our way to waypoint 1. And as Leah mentioned, after waypoint 1 is waypoint 2, just 20 meters from the International Space Station. There will be that will be a checkpoint where they will make sure that everything is good before docking. And again, docking is autonomous. Dragon is an autonomous vehicle. So the astronauts still are just monitoring all the way until the vehicle basically latches onto the International Space Station.
We'll start hearing more and more chatter, too, as we get closer between all the crew members. And one of the call-outs that we'll hear just as the crew is about to make contact with the International Space Station is CHOP, or that stands for Crew Hands-Off Point. That's about 2 meters from the space station. At that point, the crew should not be sending any commands to Dragon. However, again, we really don't anticipate that they would be because it is an autonomous docking. So about 10 minutes away till we reach waypoint 1. Again, we're going to move right on through, head to that waypoint 2 hold point, and then we are about 20 minutes away from docking itself. So again, we're docking to the Node 2 Zenith port today. That's the space-facing port. And this is, we may not see the docking. We may see it, but we have two bands of communication on the International Space Station. We have the KU band, which is how our video comes down. We have the S band, that's our sound and audio. The KU band antenna, we do something called KU masking. So we send commands to this antenna to not radiate in a certain area because it could reflect off of Dragon and the International Space Station. So we don't want that to radiate onto Dragon and back on the antenna itself. It can damage the antenna. It's a higher power KU link, so we don't want to damage that antenna dish if we don't have to, obviously. It can, risk the electronics inside, any tracking sensors. So we may not see docking. There is still a possibility. It just kind of depends on the location of those antennas at the time. But if we don't have video of the docking from that one location, obviously we will still have audio communications as well as comms with the crew to let us know that Dragon has arrived.
Again, if you're just now joining us, you are tuned into the Crew 7 mission. The Crew 7 crew is inside of that Dragon vehicle that you see there on your screen, and they're currently making their way to waypoint 1, which we expect to reach and pass through without a hold in about 7 minutes or so from now.
This view coming from a camera on the International Space Station of Dragon continuing its approach. Again, we are going up and above the space station, so we may eventually have some views of Dragon looking down on the station with the Earth below it. We do anticipate entering an orbital nighttime here shortly. It looks about like 10 minutes till the next sunset. Currently flying 269 statute miles over the Indian Ocean, south of Africa. Another view here from the International Space Station. Dragon is that big, bright object pretty much in the center of your screen. And this view in Mission Control Hawthorne here at SpaceX headquarters. So we do see, we just had some great views of Dragon from the International Space Station. We've had views of the space station from Dragon. We use the tracking data relay satellite systems as we orbit around the Earth. So we have these handover periods when the space station's satellites are transferring essentially from one to the other, that KU band, as we were talking about, that video comms coming down. We have these short handover periods within which we're, again, switching those ground stations or the satellites, making sure we pick up shortly. So these are planned, or they're tracked, essentially. We can also extend these if needed. So sometimes we can get a little more time on a different satellite. Let's say we're on a spacewalk and we don't want to have maybe a 10-minute loss of comm. So we're able to work with the other users of these satellites or these ground stations and make sure that we're getting constant communication at that time. So right now we are taking views from Mission Control Hawthorne on the left, Mission Control Houston on the right, as we are getting into these dynamic operations when we will be seeing Dragon get even closer to the International Space Station.
And both of these teams on your screen are actively working. They're currently working in tandem, as we need both the team monitoring Dragon to coordinate with the team monitoring the International Space Station, as we are basically bringing the two together as we speak.
So again, we do expect to get those communications back, those videos back from Dragon and from the space station pretty shortly. But we are tracking to arrive at waypoint 1. Again, we're passing right through waypoint 1 today. We didn't have the need to stop. Both teams polled that they are go to pass through and head to waypoint 2. But we're expecting to see or hear that call out of waypoint 1 in just a couple of minutes. Again, we're tracking
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop, approach 1 and soft capture ring extension will begin shortly, and then expect Dragon to continue approach to waypoint 2.
SpaceX Dragon, copy all.
All right. Right on time. We are again expecting waypoint 1 arrival in just a couple of minutes. Docking could happen as soon as 10 minutes from now. Also heard the call to the crew that the soft capture ring extension will begin shortly. That's the first step in docking. We have soft capture, and this ring will retract, pulling Dragon into the International Space Station, that international docking adapter. And then there are a set of 12 hooks that will securely attach Dragon to the docking adapter. That's what we call hard capture. After that, we'll get into our depressurization of the vestibule.
And also a part of docking is where the Dragon spacecraft will actually connect an umbilical, set of umbilicals to the space station, basically provide power to Dragon while it's on the International Space Station.
So again, as we get closer to docking, if you are just joining us, this is NASA's SpaceX Crew 7 mission to the International Space Station. We have 4 members aboard Endurance today: Jasmin Moghbeli, Andreas Mogensen, Konstantin Borisov, and Satoshi Furukawa. They are scheduled for about 10 minutes from now to arrive at the International Space Station, reaching waypoint 1 here, about 220 meters directly above their docking port. So we hear those Quindar tones. We like to pause to make sure that we can hear the real stars of the show. The teams in our mission control rooms talk with the crew members aboard the spacecraft.
We did expect to pass through waypoint 1 at 5:59 a.m. Pacific time. So that may be why they may be trying to establish comms here. We'll see if we can get an update here shortly.
Yeah, that's our crew. That's Crew 7. They will be arriving here just within the next 10 minutes, potentially. We have on the left, from the left, Jasmin Moghbeli, NASA astronaut and the commander of Crew 7. To her right, pilot Andreas Mogensen. Next to him is Satoshi Furukawa, JAXA, Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut. And on the far right, Konstantin Borisov of Roscosmos.
Station, Houston on the Big Loop.
Houston Station, with you on the Big Loop.
Okay, Woody, we're ready for you to monitor approach per step 3 of 1.102 Dragon approach and retreat monitoring. Let us know when your review is complete and you are ready for docking.
Amy, I copy. Monitor approach per step 3. Review of steps 5 and 6 is complete, and ISS is ready for docking. Welcome, Crew 7.
Excellent. And for your awareness, at waypoint 2, Dragon will briefly pause to align for docking and then automatically resume approach.
Station copies.
All right, and that was communication from the Capcom in Mission Control Houston. It's Amy Dill this morning communicating with NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg on the International Space Station. Again, he's primed for monitoring this approach and docking of Dragon. So they are getting all set up on the space station side ahead of docking. Again, we're looking for that to happen around 6:08 a.m. Pacific time, so within the next few minutes.
Yeah, it's getting pretty exciting. Initial contact between Dragon and the International Space Station is expected, as Leah said, at 6:08 a.m. Pacific time, 9:08 a.m. Eastern time. Before reaching waypoint 1, mission operators conducted a go-no-go poll to allow Dragon to begin its approach to waypoint 2, which is located inside of the keep-out sphere, about 20 meters away from the space station.
As we've talked about previously, all of these visiting vehicles take this phased approach to the space station. They stop at these predetermined gates for teams to run quick checks on the vehicle performance before approaching the space station. So we know slow and steady wins the race when it comes to bringing two spacecraft together. The docking operations require a really great deal of precision to make sure we're keeping the spacecraft and obviously the crew safe.
At the 20-meter distance from station's docking adapter, Dragon's approach will slow, and it will begin to align itself with the adapter to come in for the final approach.
Dragon will make its first initial soft contact with the adapter's soft capture ring, which will then retract to bring Dragon in for the hard capture sequence. As a further precaution, Dragon's soft capture system includes a set of rotary spring dampers that helps lessen the force of the contact between the capsule and the station. So for a little bit more of an update on what's happening on the International Space Station and in Houston, let's check in with Sandra Jones. Sandra?
Thanks, Leah. Right now, the crew on board Space Station is awake and preparing for the upcoming docking of Dragon to Space Station. Everything continuing to look good here on the Space Station side. NASA
Dragon
astronaut
SpaceX
Woody
on the
Hoberg
Big
will...
Loop. Soft capture ring extension is complete.
SpaceX Dragon copy, soft capture ring deployed complete.
Good words there up to the crew. So as I was saying, Hoberg will be in the station's cupola using special software to track Dragon's approach and make sure it stays in the expected zones. Hoberg will also be primed for hatch opening operations once Dragon is docked. He'll start by opening the large hatch on Node 2 Zenith, which will give him access into the pressurized mating adapter. The crew will then have to pressurize the vestibule, which is the small space between the hatches on Dragon and Space Station.
And
This
Dragon
was exposed
SpaceX
to
on the Big
vacuum
Loop
prior to
ground
docking.
has pulled go for approach 2. Please confirm visors are down and that you are ready for docking.
SpaceX Dragon copies on the big loop, go, and also crew members have visors down. We are ready.
Excellent news, Dragon. Ground is going to be enabling approach shortly, and a reminder that after the crew hands-off point, retreat and breakout are not permitted.
Dragon copies.
And great calls again up to the crew, letting them know everything is going smoothly. We're getting really close to docking, just confirming that they have their visors down and they can be in that configuration ahead of docking. So everything good here from the space station side. I'll toss it back over to Hawthorne so that you guys can give us an update on your end.
Thanks, Sandra. And we did hear the Corps also call out that CHOP, which is the crew hands-off point. Basically, that means that the crew must be hands-off. In case of any aborts that happen during that time, it will be done by Dragon. Now, waypoint 2 is up next, and that will put Dragon only 20 meters away from the space station. From here, the spacecraft will focus on aligning its docking system with the International Docking Adapter.
Yeah, so we're getting pretty close. Right now, it looks like we are about 80 meters from the International Space Station. Again, we did not stop at waypoint 1 today. We just kept on moving through that 220-meter mark. We will hold briefly at waypoint 2. That just gives us a chance to do any final checks, make sure everybody's go before moving in for docking. Additionally, we heard previously that the soft capture ring is extended. That's what's going to make first contact with the International Space Station. It will then pull Dragon into the International Space Station's International Docking Adapter before those 12 hooks begin to do that hard capture sequence, really securely securing it to the spacecraft.
And we are expecting initial contact between Dragon and the International Space Station any minute now.
Yeah, we are now 60 meters away from the space station. Again, this is really methodical. It's a very careful process as we prepare for docking, just to ensure the safety of the spacecraft. Like we mentioned, of course, the crew. And again, we do not have views from the International Space Station at this time, but we have good confirmation that Dragon is on the docking axis, continues to move in as planned. Sometimes we don't have these views as we are moving from satellite to satellite in the Tracking Data and Relay Satellite System known as TDRS. Additionally, sometimes we just don't have great views because it's nighttime on the space station. You know, we see sunrise or sunset every 45 minutes. They are in an orbital nighttime at this point. The International Space Station flying 265 statute miles south of Australia. Dragon now 40 meters from the space station, continuing to approach waypoint 2.
And there you can see on your screen, this is a view from Dragon approaching the International Space Station. You can see how close it is. You can begin to see those details on the station. And looking straight ahead in the center of your screen was the International Docking Adapter.
And this view from inside Dragon Endurance itself, so these are our 4 crew members. You can only see the commander and pilot right now, Jasmin Moghbeli and Andreas Mogensen, just monitoring the approach on those crew display panels. Again, they are not making commands at this point. Additionally, at that 2-meter 2 meters away from the space station, we'll hear the chop call, at which point they should not send any commands. Right now, we are at 23 meters from the space station, continuing to close in on that zenith port of Node 2. Down toward the bottom of your screen, you can see the nose cone of Dragon Endeavour, which brought the Crew 6 astronauts to the International Space Station. So we're expecting to hear the call for waypoint 2 shortly, where we will do a brief pause before moving in towards the docking port.
Also, a cool thing in this view is Dragon is now directly above the International Space Station, and you can tell in the view because you can see the clouds on Earth in the background.
And it looks like we have reached that 20-meter waypoint 2 mark.
Station, Houston on the Big Loop. Dragon is on final approach and is go for docking. Monitor per steps 5 and 6 in 1.102 Dragon approach and retreat monitoring.
Houston Station, copies all.
All right, confirmation from Amy Dill, the Capcom in Mission Control Houston, to the crew that they are moving in for docking. So we are now 16 meters away from the International Space Station. Again, continuing slowly into the Node 2 Zenith port for docking today.
This is such a cool view. It almost feels like we're on Dragon approaching the International Space Station.
Space Station and Dragon now flying over Australia. And Dragon just 13 meters away. Again, a very methodical and careful approach to our docking port. Great views coming from Dragon this morning as we get ready to welcome 4 new crew members to the orbiting laboratory.
Dragon is at 10 meters.
Copy, 10 meters.
And we are just moments away from Dragon docking with the International Space Station. First will be a soft capture, and then there will be 12 hooks deploying 6 at a time to create that hard capture between the vehicle and the station.
Dragon now just 7 meters away, now 6 meters away from the Node 2 port.
5 meters.
Copy, 5.
That call coming from Dragon Commander Jasmin Moghbeli, her first spaceflight to the International Space Station. Standing by for the call of crew hands-off point, or CHOP.
Copy, CHOP.
1 meter.
And Dragon, we see soft capture complete, and attenuation will begin shortly.
Dragon copy.
And contact confirmed. 6:16 a.m. Pacific time. 261 statute miles over Australia.
Guys, thank you for the welcome.
And that welcome coming from the crew aboard the International Space Station. Endurance has arrived with its international crew. They will begin the hard capture sequence shortly, but we are now up to 11 crew members on the International Space Station after they float through the hatch this morning.
And on the big loop, ring retraction is in progress.
Dragon copies, ring retraction in progress.
Now, again, we don't have views right at this moment of Dragon on the International Space Station, but we did see that docking again at 6:16 a.m. Pacific time as the International Space Station and Dragon were flying 261 statute miles over Australia.
And there's still a few steps to complete before Dragon is securely attached to the station. We've now done the soft capture, but then there will be the completion of the soft capture ring retraction, as well as hard capture sequence beginning, and then finally hard dock completing. And again, that will require 12 hooks to deploy. Again, 6 at a time will deploy to make that hard capture completion.
Of course, once we have a successful hard capture, it still is going to take a little bit before we see our crew members float through the hatch into the International Space Station and officially bring us up to that total of 11, at least for about the next few days or so. We will first pressurize the vestibule. Well, Woody Hoberg will open the station side of the hatch. He will pressurize the vestibule, the space between both of those hatches, the Dragon hatch and the station hatch, bringing that to the same pressure as is inside Dragon and the space station. It's much of what we are used to here on Earth. Eventually, they will bring the crew members aboard. Again, they will give us a welcome ceremony. We'll get to see them and hear their first remarks about their visit to the space station, maybe what the ride was like. Then they will move right into work. They will start their safety briefing with the crew, making sure that they remember all their training from the ground, get brought up to speed on the International Space Station itself. This is Dragon Endurance's third visit to the International Space Station, first on Crew 3, then with Crew 5, now Crew 7. It joins Dragon Endeavour, both docked to the Node 2 module, also known as Harmony.
And that next step, soft capture ring retraction, is typically expected about 4 minutes after soft capture. So we should...
And Dragon, ring retraction is complete. The docking sequence is holding for MCS reconfiguration.
SpaceX Dragon copies.
And what perfect timing. Soft capture ring retraction is now complete.
As you mentioned earlier, during this time, we're also connecting an umbilical from Dragon to the station. Dragon has been using power generated by its solar arrays, also battery power. Once it's connected to the International Space Station, it can start using power from the station itself. You got a great view of those solar arrays as we were flying in this morning. And so at this point, Dragon will probably start using the station power for the remainder of its time on the space station over these next 6 months. And again, we do have soft capture complete for Dragon Endurance. We are standing by for the start of the hard capture sequence. This process takes several minutes, but it is the securing of 12 hooks from Dragon to the International Space Station, giving us that firm, secure hold.
MCS configured. Proceeding with hook driving.
And we did hear that call out, proceeding with hook driving. That is the beginning of the hard capture sequence. Again, as Leo was just mentioning, there will be 12 hooks, and they will deploy 6 at a time. So there'll be 6 hooks first. Once those are fully latched to the International Space Station, then the next set of 6 hooks will begin to deploy. And this process should take few minutes, about 4 minutes or so, until hard docking is complete.
Again, we welcomed Crew 7 to the International Space Station at 6:16 a.m. Pacific time this morning. Here's your view inside Dragon Endurance right now over the shoulder of our commander, Jasmin Moghbeli, and pilot Andreas Mogensen. It was Moghbeli's first trip to the International Space Station and Mogensen's second. This is also Konstantin Borisov's first trip to the International Space Station. And Satoshi Furukawa is returning as well. So he is the most experienced on this crew when it comes to days in space. I believe he has 165 days from previous missions. This is the view that we saw as we were preparing for docking. It was giving us great views of the docking port itself. Now that we have completed that soft capture, we are obviously pulled into the space station. And those first 6 hooks are driving. We are, again, in the hard capture process right now. So we'll see those first 6 hooks drive, followed by the second 6, at which point they will be considered officially hard docked to the space station. We're getting some good progress on the hooks driving. It looks like the second 6 are now starting to drive. Meanwhile, on the International Space Station, again, it is a Sunday, so it is considered an off-duty day for the crew. The 3 cosmonauts currently on board are eating their midday meal. Meanwhile, Woody Hoberg is monitoring Dragon's docking. He will eventually assist with the pressurization of the vestibule, the hatch openings, and welcoming the crew on board.
And on the big loop, hard capture is complete. Dragon, you are go to raise visors.
Dragon copies, raising visors.
And if you're just now joining us, you are tuned in to the NASA SpaceX Crew 7 mission. And the crew has just docked to the International Space Station. Hard capture has been confirmed. And the crew lifted off from Space Launch Complex 39A on Friday early morning at 12:27 a.m. Pacific Time, 3:27 a.m. Eastern Time. And about 30 hours later, they are now docked to the International Space Station.
Yeah, that docking of our 4 crew members coming at 6:16 a.m. Pacific Time.
Houston Station on the big loop, PMA ingress at 1.1.
And Woody, we're not quite ready for that step yet. We'll let you know when we are.
I copy, standing by.
Again, those comms coming from Mission Control Houston, the Capcom there, speaking with Woody Hoberg aboard the International Space Station, who's been monitoring the approach and arrival of Dragon, as well as the pressurization at the vestibule, the hatch opening that we'll see over the next couple of hours. Docking came this morning at 6:16 a.m. Pacific Time, 9:16 a.m. Eastern Time, as the spacecraft and the International Space Station were flying over Australia. We've again seen completion of soft capture as well as of hard capture.
And on the big loop, docking sequence is complete. Dragon, welcome, Vilkom, Yokoso, Dobro Pожаловать to the International Space Station.
ISS from Dragon on the big loop. Thank you so much. I have to keep reminding myself this is not just a dream. Thank you to the lead, Paul Weiss. We had to keep reminding ourselves that when we open that hatch, we're not walking out into the training center. I'll hand it over to Andy for a few words.
Yeah, I want to thank everyone at SpaceX as well, including everyone at our respective partner agencies for getting us this far. You know, this is the first step of the journey, The real mission begins now on board the International Space Station. We have a lot of exciting work ahead of us that we look forward to. And thank you to everyone at our agencies for preparing us. We look forward to getting ready.
This is Satoshi. It was just like a training session in Hawthorne, California, and I'd like to express my appreciation to NASA, ESA, CSA, Roscosmos, JAXA, and especially SpaceX for flying us safely to the International Space Station. Thank you.
Thanks all. It was exciting. Like my friend said, it was really close to what we have experienced during the training. We just had to remind ourselves that it's happening for real. Very excited, very happy to be on ISS. Looking forward to opening that hatch. Thanks all the agencies. Thanks Paul. Thanks the team. We're really excited to be here. Thanks SpaceX for this marvelous vehicle. Thanks.
And Dragon, SpaceX on the Big Loop, on behalf of SpaceX, we want to thank you for training with us, and it's been an honor and privilege to bring you to the station today. Ground will be enabling our hardline power and communication connections. You are go to DOF suits per 4.012, and we're going to be taking cameras external.
SpaceX Dragon copies all. We'll step into 4.012 suit docking and audio configuration.
And some awesome words from the core, our core here, Shiva Bharavaj, speaking in every language to the crew, which was pretty awesome, welcoming the crew to the International Space Station. The crew also saying some amazing, kind words. That was really awesome to hear. Now that Dragon has completed the docking sequence, the spacecraft must undergo a handful of checks before we will be able to open the hatch. The crew on board Dragon will now get a chance to get out of their suits before moving into hatch operations.
That's right, and things will begin picking up inside the station too as NASA's Woody Hoberg gets the hatch on the station side ready to be open, starts pressurizing that area known as the vestibule between the Dragon and station hatches. So with Dragon docked, that's going to do it for us here in Hawthorne, but our coverage for Crew 7 doesn't stop here. If you stay tuned, we'll have NASA's Sandra Jones in Houston continuing to walk you through the pressurization of that vestibule, the hatch opening as well.
We're going to toss it to Sandra at Mission Control Houston to take us through the vestibule pressurization and hatch opening, when we'll see NASA astronauts Jasmin Moghbeli, Andreas Mogensen, Satoshi Furukawa, and Konstantin Borisov float into the International Space Station. But first, let's quickly recap how they got there. They suited up in the suit-up room and rode in the Teslas on the way to the pad, to their launch site. They've then ingressed the Dragon vehicle and lifted off from Kennedy Space Center at pad 39A at 3:27 a.m. Eastern Time on Friday morning. Stage 1 came back to land on landing zone 1, and Dragon separated from Falcon 9's second stage, and then the nose cone deployed, as well as we had a few major burns, 5 burns on Dragon to enable them to get to the International Space Station, and docking confirmed at 6:16 a.m. Pacific Time, 9:16 a.m. Eastern Time on Sunday, August 27th.
Yeah, so now that Crew 7 has arrived, we are looking ahead to the return of Crew 6. We'll be taking you along as Steve Bowen, Woody Hoberg, Sultan Al-Nayati, and Andrei Fedyayev return home after their long-duration stay aboard the station. Our teams are assessing return dates, which will be announced on nasa.gov, so be sure to tune in as NASA and SpaceX bring you live coverage every step of their journey. Also, be sure to follow SpaceX and NASA on social media for real-time updates. Thanks again for watching. Go NASA, go SpaceX, and go Crew 7 and Crew 6. Now sending it over to Sandra at the Johnson Space Center in Houston to continue sharing the mission as the crew prepares to board their home for the next 6 months, the International Space Station. For those of you watching on the SpaceX YouTube channel, please head over to NASA TV to follow the coverage live, and we'll see you soon.
This is Mission Control Houston. Crew 7 successfully docked to the International Space Station. That docking occurred at 8:16 a.m. Central Time this morning while flying 261 statute miles over Queensland, Australia. Now that Dragon is docked, NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg is going to begin securing some hardware and then moving right into hatch operations. First, he will open the large hatch at Node 2 Zenith, which will give him access inside the pressurized mating adapter. He'll then work to pressurize the vestibule, which is the small space between the hatches on Dragon and the space station. This was exposed to vacuum prior to docking, so it needs to be filled with air to make sure its pressure is nearly equal with the atmospheric pressures on Dragon and the space station. To do this, Hoberg will use a small valve on the station's hatch to slowly introduce air into the vestibule, and flight controllers here in Houston will monitor the pressure and temperature readings inside to verify that everything is leak-free before we get ready to open up the hatches. We expect it to take a little bit of time to get everything pressurized and checked out before we open up the hatches, but we'll keep you updated on the targeted hatch opening time. Following hatch opening, there will be a welcoming ceremony which will take place. Following this, the crew will get a safety briefing, get oriented, unpack their belongings from the Crew 7 vehicle, and get situated in their new home for the next 6 months. You're looking at a live view inside Mission Control Houston. The current team on console is being led by NASA Flight Director Judd Freeling. The flight control team here in Houston has been busy this morning as approach and docking neared. The team on the ground was in preparation. About 3 hours prior to docking, flight controllers began to feather solar arrays. This is a multi-step process and helps protect the arrays from plumes and keeps them safe when a vehicle arrives.
Dragon, SpaceX on Dragon to ground. No response required, but ISS power connection has been established.
Copy.
And Station Houston on 2 for Woody, you have a go in step 2.2, your go to perform initial IDA Dragon vestibule pressurization for leak check.
All right, Amy, copy go in 2.2. Thanks.
and Dragon SpaceX on Dragon to ground. No response required, but expect ISS crew to begin vestibule pressurization. You can follow along in 4.400, section 4. In addition, you are go for sections 1 through 3 of 4.400 once you're complete with suit doffing.
And NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg is continuing to step through the procedures ahead of hatch opening this morning. He's working on getting that small space or vestibule repressurized because it was exposed to vacuum. And as we eagerly await Crew 7 to float through the hatch later this morning, let's take a look at some of the science and research investigations that they'll be completing while on board Space Station.
The International Space Station is a state-of-the-art microgravity laboratory that is unlocking discoveries not possible on Earth and helping us push farther into deep space.
Every single day, we are answering big questions about Earth and about space, about where we came from and about where we're going. But the other thing that we're doing is we're learning more questions to ask.
Microgravity turns almost everything we know upside down. Liquids behave completely differently. Fire burns in new ways. Biological systems reveal surprises.
There's a few things that have made me gasp out loud up on board Space Station. Watching heart cells actually beat has been a pretty big one.
We're studying ways to grow food in microgravity.
I got to tell you, these are pretty amazing.
We're learning how human bodies react to life in space and how to keep crew members safe and strong on long-duration exploration missions.
Deadlifts are awesome on Earth. They're also awesome in zero gravity.
We're testing technologies that will be critical to our return to the moon and great leap to Mars. Our research has contributed to medical and social benefits on our home planet, allowing us to find new ways to combat disease back on Earth and develop technologies to deliver clean water to remote communities in need. The spectacular vantage point of more than 200 miles above our planet supports our monitoring of Earth's climate, natural disasters, and plant life.
The orbital perspective that we have here on the ISS is just absolutely amazing. Earth is gorgeous.
The growing new space economy, so vital to our continued progress in space, is flourishing in low Earth orbit. We're inspiring future generations from a platform that is one of the largest international collaborations of our time. We're doing science at 17,500 miles per hour. Come along for the ride.
This view inside Mission Control Houston following a docking of Crew 7 at 8:16 a.m. Central Time earlier this morning. At this time, NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg is working through procedures to get the hatches open. First up, he is working on repressurizing the vestibule. And we're continuing to get live views here inside Mission Control Houston. We did have a docking earlier this morning at 8:16 a.m. Central. On your screen is NASA Flight Director Judd Freeling, who led the teams during today's docking. He is on the console that has the bouquet of roses on them. For more than 30 years, one Texas family has shown their support for NASA Mission Control with this simple gesture of sending flowers to Mission Control Houston. On board the International Space Station, NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg continues to step through procedures ahead of hatch opening. He's working on getting the vestibule repressurized. That's that small space between the hatches that was exposed to vacuum. Needs to be repressurized before the hatches can be opened. The International Space Station is currently flying 262 statute miles, approaching Toronto, about to enter into New York State.
And Station Houston on 2, we noticed you turned on the Node 2 camcorder, so we are going to join you on board.
Hey, Amy, thanks for the heads up, and you're welcome aboard.
Sounds like we'll be getting some views on board here shortly as Woody Hoberg continues to step through procedures ahead of hatch opening. If you're just joining us this morning, Crew 7 has docked to the International Space Station after launching at 2:27 a.m. Central Time yesterday from Launch Pad 39A at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The crew of NASA astronaut Jasmin Moghbeli, ESA, European Space Agency astronaut Andy Mogensen, JAXA, Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Satoshi Furukawa and Roscosmos cosmonaut Konstantin Borisov docked to the orbital outpost at 8:16 a.m. Central this morning. Inside the International Space Station, Woody Hoberg is making incremental steps toward hatch opening. He's working through procedures to equalize the pressure between Dragon and Space Station, and following this, the vestibule's pressure will be brought up to about 5 pounds per square inch, and a leak check will be performed. If all goes smoothly with that leak check, the pressure will then be equalized to that of Space Station and Dragon, and then after pressure is equalized and some additional checks, Hoberg will be given the go to open up the station side hatch, the A-pass hatch.
Dragon, Houston, on the big loop. Stand by for hardline audio config.
And you're looking at a view inside the International Space Station.
Houston, Dragon copies.
We may see some views of NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg as he continues to step through those procedures ahead of hatch opening. This is a view looking at the A-pass hatch. Of course, it's not quite open yet, but here shortly we will see it be able to be opened up once all those pressure checks are completed. And this is a view from outside the International Space Station of Crew Dragon Endurance docked to the orbital outpost. Inside are 4 human beings: NASA astronaut Jasmin Moghbeli, ESA astronaut Andy Mogensen, JAXA astronaut Satoshi Furukawa, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Konstantin Borisov. They docked to Space Station at 8:16 a.m. Central Time, following their launch from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida yesterday at 2:27 a.m. Central.
Dragon, Houston on the big loop. Hardline audio configuration is complete. Please do a comm check.
Houston, Dragon copies. I have you loud and clear. How me? And we'll do station next.
Dragon Houston, I have you loud and clear.
Station, Dragon, comm check. How do you hear?
Dragon Station has you loud and clear. How me?
We have you the same.
And that was a communications check between Dragon Endurance and the International Space Station. Everything checking out well.
SpaceX Dragon on the big loop. Suits are drying.
Copy, Dragon. Suits are drying. And Dragon, let us know when it's okay for us to come back on board.
Wilco, not quite yet.
SpaceX copies.
And with that call, we may shortly be getting some views back inside Crew Dragon Endurance. The crew has removed their spacesuits and has them in a drying configuration as they wait to come aboard the International Space Station.
Station, Houston on the big loop for leak check status.
Go ahead, Amy.
Hey, just want to let you know we're expecting about another 10 minutes or so to confirm that the leak check is good.
All right, we copy. Thanks for the update.
While NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg continues to step through those procedures to repressurize the vestibule, his crewmates are enjoying a day off. On board the International Space Station currently are 7 human beings. Those include NASA astronaut Frank Rubio, Roscosmos cosmonaut Sergei Prokopyev, Dmitry Petelin, and Andrei Fadayev, as well as NASA astronaut Steve Bowen, Woody Hoberg, and then UAE astronaut Sultan Al-Nayadi. Once Crew 7 floats aboard the International Space Station, there will be 11 humans on board until Crew 6 departs here in a short time.
Station Houston on Station Ground 2 for Woody.
Amy, with you on 2.
We've had a good vestibule leak check, so you are go for the Part 2 activity in Step 3.1.
I copy. Good news. Copy go in 3.1.
And we are getting a view of NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg as he continues to step through those hatch opening procedures. Hoberg was working to install some padding on the APAS hatch to help outfit it to protect it. And we did hear that that vestibule repressurization was successful, as you can see on your screen. Woody Hoberg continuing to step through procedures ahead of hatch opening. We are expecting a hatch opening to occur around 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern, if all continues to go smoothly with the operations. And this view of Crew Dragon Endurance inside are 4 astronauts: NASA astronaut Jasmin Moghbeli, ESA astronaut Andy Mogensen, JAXA astronaut Satoshi Furukawa, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Konstantin Borisov. They docked to the International Space Station at 8:16 a.m. Central Time and are now working through procedures on their end as well ahead of hatch opening around 10 a.m. Central Time. This view back inside the space station as Hoberg continues to step through those procedures. We did see him installing some padding on the APAS hatch. The APAS hatch is the androgynous peripheral assembly system. He installed that padding to help outfit it ahead of the hatch opening. And you can see him now. He has a flashlight. He's going to visually inspect the hatch, make sure everything looks good before the hatch can actually be opened up. And that APAS hatch now open. So with that APAS hatch open, that's not quite the end of the process here. There's one more hatch to open on the Dragon side. So the crew on both space station and inside Endurance are working through procedures to open up that hatch next, and then they'll welcome the Crew 7 astronauts on board. As you can see, Hoberg now using that flashlight to inspect the hatch on the Dragon side, make sure everything is looking good, no foreign object debris or FOD, before they do go ahead and open up that hatch here shortly. We are going to stand by for the pressure to just equal out between the space station hatch and the Dragon hatch.
Houston Station on 2, APAS hatch is open, negative condensation.
We copy all, Frank. Thank you.
And this is a view This is a view inside Mission Control Houston. NASA Flight Director Jed Freeling, who you see on the console there with the flowers, led the team through docking operations this morning. The crew here in Houston continuing to work alongside the crew on board the space station, namely NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg, as he steps through procedures ahead of hatch opening. The APAS hatch, or the station side hatch, is now open. We're standing by for that pressure to equal out between the Dragon hatch and the station hatch before the Dragon hatch can be opened. As NASA continues to live and work in low Earth orbit, humanity's home in space for over 20 years, we're also working with commercial industry on commercial LEO destinations to ensure there is no gap in low Earth orbit. So let's check out this video to learn more about the commercialization of low Earth orbit.
Will no longer be available for comm.
LEO. It stands for Low Earth Orbit. That's a portion of outer space about 250 miles up. And for over 20 years, it's been home to the world's most unique laboratory, the International Space Station. In this weightless environment, the space station has enabled scientific and engineering breakthroughs that just weren't possible on Earth. It's taught us more about our planet, physics and biology, and it's preparing humans to travel farther from home than ever before. And as the space station approaches its end of life, America will maintain leadership in LEO by enabling a new era of commercial spaceflight. Through the Commercial LEO Development Program, NASA is working with industry partners to develop the first generation of commercial space destinations. These will be privately owned and operated space facilities, where NASA will be just one of many customers. This new orbital economy will stimulate commerce and usher in the next generation of aerospace engineering, opening the door for scientific discoveries and private astronauts, allowing NASA to continue its critical research in LEO, supporting deep space exploration and bringing those benefits back home to Earth.
And if you're just joining us, Crew 7 successfully docked to the International Space Station at 8:16 a.m. Central Time this morning. The crew is working through procedures to open up the hatches between Space Station and Dragon.
SpaceX Dragon for food and water inventory when available.
And Dragon, I'm with you on the big loop for inventory.
Okay, regarding water, all bottles consumed from bag 201 and 202. Regarding bag 203, 4 out of 5 bottles consumed. How copy?
Copy, Satoshi. All water consumed from 201 and 202, and 4 of 5 bottles consumed on 203.
Good copy. Regarding food, bag 301, 3 quarters consumed, and 302, also 3 quarters consumed. 309er, also 3 quarters consumed. 310, also 3 quarters consumed. How copy?
Copy, Satoshi. 3 quarters of food consumed on bags 301, 302, 309er, 310.
Good copy. Thanks.
And Satoshi, one clarification, does the water count include the bottle for 4.400 section 5?
Affirmative.
Great, thank you.
And that was JAXA astronaut Satoshi Furukawa calling down to the core about water usage that was drank on the way to space station. There's a very methodical way that the Dragon is packed with the cargo in order to have the proper weight distribution, and SpaceX keeps track of this throughout the mission in order to ensure everything is as it should be in the correct place ahead of re-entry.
Houston and SpaceX station on the Big Loop. Station is ready for Dragon hatch equalization.
Houston copies.
And with that call, Hoburg reporting that the space station side is ready to begin the equalization process. We'll stand by for the Dragon side to be ready for that step as well. Once that equalization process occurs, the team will verify that everything went smoothly with it, and then at that point, the hatch will be good to be open between the space station and Endurance.
And Dragon SpaceX on the Big Loop for a couple of items.
Go ahead for Dragon.
Hey, Dragon. Just wanted to double check if we could come back on board with video. Let us know when you're ready for that. In addition, we can perform the equalization while you are completing Section 5 of 4.400. Just let us know when you're ready for equalization.
We're doing Section 5 now, and we're ready for equalization. The only thing we need to do is doff our undergarments and change into flight suits, so hang on with coming internal with the cameras, please.
Okay, Dragon. Thanks for the update.
And with that call, we may expect to get views back inside Crew Dragon Endurance once the crew finishes getting changed. They did take off their spacesuits in order to get them into a drying configuration. The next major milestone that we'll be tracking is for the pressure to equalize between Endurance and the space station before the hatch can be opened.
Station and Dragon, Houston on the Big Loop. And Station and Dragon, Houston on the Big Loop.
Dragon, ready to copy?
Stand by for equalization. It's expecting to take 2 minutes.
Dragon copies.
And station copies.
And both the station side and the Dragon side have been given the go for the equalization process to begin. Expecting that to take about 2 minutes. Once the pressure is equalized, teams here on the ground will complete leak checks to make sure that everything is as expected, and then the go will be given to open up the hatch. And here is a view from inside the International Space Station. You can see that a pass hatch is open.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop for alert reconfiguration.
Go for Dragon.
Dragon, we've been evaluating the GPS-2 alerts on your board and are going to clear most of those. We're going to keep the AGPS-2 filter faulted walk-off on the board, so you have insight that that receiver is still down. How copy?
Dragon copies all.
Good news, and clarification, degraded performance, not hard down.
Dragon copies degraded performance.
And the endurance equalization process is underway. If you're just joining us this morning, Crew 7 has arrived to the International Space Station following their launch Saturday morning from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. We are standing by for the hatches to open here a short time from now. The A-Pass hatch, or the hatch on the space station side, has already been opened, as you can see here on your screen. We are just waiting for that pressure to equalize out between the A-Pass hatch and the hatch on Crew Dragon. Once that pressure is equalized, the team here on the ground will do some checks, make sure everything looks okay, and then the go will be given to go ahead and open up that hatch, at which point we'll see Crew 7 float through the hatch and be welcomed aboard their home for the next 6 months, the International Space Station. We're continuing to stand by for that pressure to equal out between Endurance and the International Space Station. Again, we're continuing to stand by for that pressure to equalize out before the hatch can be opened and Crew 7 can float aboard the International Space Station. Once they are on board, following a welcoming ceremony, they will take part in a safety briefing, which is typical for arriving crew members to Space Station. This safety briefing will be led by Space Station Commander Sergei Prokopyev and will officially kick off the handover period between Crew 6 and Crew 7. Crew 6 is slated to undock from the International Space Station no earlier than September 2nd, but this will be monitored and refined in the coming days. And we're getting views again of NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg floating inside the International Space Station as he continues to step through those procedures ahead of hatch opening. He does have the APAS hatch open already. That's the space station side hatch, while we continue to stand by for pressure to equalize. And this view from inside Mission Control Houston. NASA Flight Director Judd Freeling did lead the team this morning in docking operations. That docking occurred at 8:16 a.m. Central.
The big loop for next steps.
SpaceX Dragon, we are ready for next steps, and we're also ready for cameras to go internal.
Excellent, Dragon. We'll put that in work, and I wanted to let you know that the vestibule and capsule are equalized, so we are ready for hatch open.
And you heard that go for hatch open. The vestibule was repressurized and everything checking out. Short time from now, we should expect to see Crew 7 float aboard the International Space Station.
SpaceX Dragon copies, and we will go ahead and open the forward hatch at this time.
Copy, Dragon. You are go for hatch opening per the decal, followed by 4.400 section 6.
And as you can see here, NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg continuing to step through those procedures ahead of hatch opening. The Crew 7 astronauts are also getting things configured and will join the 7-person crew onboard station, bringing the total crew members on station to 11 here shortly.
SpaceX Dragon on the big loop, hatches open.
And SpaceX copies, hatches open. And crew, if you could complete section 6 of 4.400, and then just a reminder that this starts the LIO clock.
Copy completing section 6 of 4.400 and copy on the LIO clock.
And we did hear that call out that the hatch was opened at 9:58 a.m. Central. NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg is now going to work to install IMV ducting to help mix the air of the space station environment with the air inside Crew Dragon. And they're also working to seal some of the LiO, or lithium hydroxide cartridges that scrubbed carbon dioxide inside the Dragon capsule on the ride to the International Space Station. The crew will also check some vent valves as well, so it may just be... And we are getting views back inside Crew Dragon Endurance of Crew 7. First time since they've docked to the International Space Station. Great to see them on board. May just be a little bit more time until we do welcome them on board as they continue those preparations, but these last final checks are critical to make sure everything is good to go, since it will remain docked to the International Space Station for the next 6 months. And first through the hatch is the commander of Crew 7, Jasmin Moghbeli, her first time on board the International Space Station. Next up we have Andy Mogensen, ESA astronaut. This is his second space flight. And coming through the hatch now is JAXA astronaut Satoshi Furukawa. This is his second mission to space as well. And next through the hatch is Konstantin Borisov of Roscosmos, his first time on board the International Space Station as well. And with that, Crew 7 is successfully on board the International Space Station, their home for the next 6 months. And if you're just joining us, Crew 7 just floated aboard the International Space Station after hatches were opened at 9:58 a.m. Central. That was following a docking that occurred at 8:16 a.m. Central. It was almost a 30-hour ride to orbit as they launched from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida at 2:27 a.m. Central. And you can see lots of excitement there. Crew going to work on securing a few items and getting everything squared away ahead of a welcome ceremony slated to begin here shortly.
Houston Dragon, IMV duct installation complete. Go for IMV fan activation.
Houston copies. We'll put that in work.
If you're just joining us, Crew 7 had the hatches open at 9:58 a.m. Central Time following a docking at 8:16 a.m. Central. We're standing by for a welcome ceremony here slated to begin shortly. The crew is just configuring some items inside Crew Dragon, setting up the cameras and preparing for that welcoming ceremony. This is the view inside Endurance. You can see the spacesuits there. They're in a drying configuration. The crew has changed out of those spacesuits clearly and are now in their flight suits.
Houston Dragon, do we have a go in step 6.3 of 2.102 to open location 23 and check for debris under panel?
Checking.
And we're getting views now inside the International Space Station. The crew is working to set up for the welcome event. You see Woody Hoberg, NASA astronaut with the microphone in his hand. He was prime for hatch opening operations this morning. And we are standing by for a welcome event slated to begin here shortly. You do see NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg with the microphone in his hand there. He is completing a scene and voice check.
This is required for us to change out our LiDAR cartridge within 20 minutes for this, put the seal on.
Copy, Jaws. We need to send 2 commands to get the IMV configured, so stand by. Shortly we'll be able to give you a go for 6.3.
Dragon copy, standing by.
Long count on the wireless mic. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
and
6,
Dragon
7,
Houston on Space Ground 2, you have a go
9,
in 6.3.
10.
Dragon copies, go in 6.3.
We are targeting our welcome ceremony to begin at 10:30 a.m. Central Time this morning. If you're just joining us, Crew 7 docked to the International Space Station at 8:16 a.m. Central following their launch yesterday evening from Kennedy Space Center in Florida. It was almost a 30-hour ride to orbit, but the hatches were opened at 9:58 a.m. Central. We did see Crew 7 float aboard the International Space Station, their home for the next 6 months, and we are standing by for that welcome ceremony to begin less than 15 minutes from now.
SpaceX Dragon, question on the LIO cartridge. Cartridge 1 was the cartridge installed as the active, so which one do you want us to now put in the active slot?
Checking Dragon. I'll get you an answer in just a sec. And Dragon SpaceX on the big loop, you will put cartridge 1 back into the active slot, but sealed. So same cartridge that you just pulled out.
Okay, Captain, we'll put cartridge 1 back in the active slot, sealed.
Good readback.
Everything looking good for our welcoming ceremony. Still on track to begin just about 10 minutes from now at 10:30 a.m. Central. And floating into the field of view is NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg. Again, he was prime in the hatch opening operations earlier this morning. Also in the frame are Roscosmos cosmonauts Dmitry Petelin and Andrei Fedyaev. And this view back inside Endurance as Crew 7 works to get everything squared away ahead of the welcoming ceremony. We can see the Crew 7 mission commander, Jasmin Moghbeli, there in the bottom of the screen. This is Moghbeli's first trip to space. And here we can see two members of Crew 7, Jasmin Moghbeli with her back to us, as well as European Space Agency astronaut Andy Mogensen. Looks like they're continuing to step through those procedures to configure the LiO, or lithium hydroxide cartridge. The LiO cartridge helps scrub carbon dioxide inside the Dragon capsule on the ride to the International Space Station.
SpaceX Dragon LiO cartridge is sealed and installed.
SpaceX copies LiO sealed at 1524 Zulu. And Dragon, have a couple quick reminders for you if you have a minute.
Yeah, go for Dragon.
So first off, the suits have completed their 1-hour drying period. We just wanted to let you know for when you get back to 4.012. And then regarding inventory, I wanted to remind you that any partially consumed meals should be disposed of on ISS. How copy?
Copy. Our 1-hour timer is up, so when we get back, we can step into the appropriate section of 4.102 and copy any partially consumed meal should be disposed of on ISS.
Good read back, Dragon. And finally, we're going to be handing over comm to Houston. It was a pleasure learning and flying with you, and we really hope you enjoy your time on station.
Hey, it's great working with you. Thanks so much, and we'll see you on the backside.
And you can see some of the Crew 7 members starting to make their way inside the International Space Station following that hatch opening at 9:58 a.m. We are targeting the welcome ceremony to begin in just about 4 minutes from now at 10:30 a.m. Central. And we are in a brief expected handover period between satellites, but will regain communications here shortly, and our video will return as well. If you're just joining us, Crew 7 docked to the International Space Station at 8:16 a.m. Central. We're standing by for a welcoming ceremony slated to begin in just a couple of minutes. Those hatches were opened at 9:58 a.m., at which point Crew 7 floated aboard the International Space Station, and at this time they're just getting settled, making sure everyone is able to be seen in the view that you see here. 11 people now on board on the International Space Station. And there you have it. All 11 members on board the International Space Station as part of Expedition 69, standing by for our welcoming ceremony slated to begin just moments from now.
Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
Houston, this is Station. We are ready for the event.
Station, please begin your welcoming remarks.
Okay, on behalf of Expedition 69, welcome to the ISS, and it is an honor to have Crew 7 with us. Congratulations to the NASA and SpaceX teams. Amazing job once again on successfully and flawlessly getting our crewmates up here to us. So thank you so much. I'll now pass it off to the Expedition 69 commander, Sergey.
Good afternoon, everybody. Expedition 69 is very glad to greet new crewmates on International Space Station. First of all, I want to say congratulations for arriving. Congratulations with successfully flight, launch, and docking. And I want to say for Satoshi and Andreas, welcome back on ISS. This is not first flight for you, but my extremely congratulations for Jasmin and Konstantin with your first flight. You became now the real astronaut and cosmonaut, and I believe this is will be so very significant event all your life. Welcome aboard, happy flight, and looking forward to together, work together. And Russian now. Поздравляем седьмой экипаж Дрэгона с успешным прибытием на станцию, стыковкой. Ждали вас очень сильно. Ждем работы совместной здесь на станции. И добро пожаловать на станцию повторно. Это для Андреаса, Сатоши не первый раз уже летает. Но мои самые большие поздравления, конечно, для тех, кто первый раз летит в космос. Прилетел Жасмин и Константин. Константин у нас представитель набора 2018 года. Он первый, кто из этого набора полетел, и это такое большое событие для всего набора. Желаю двигаться дальше в этом же направлении. Удачи нам всем. Все, удачного полета. Спасибо, что наконец-то прилетели к нам.
Thank you, Sergey and Frank, for the welcome. It's so good to see all your smiling faces. As you know, we've been training together for a while for this exact moment where we could join you and continue the amazing work that's done on the International Space Station. I want to echo the thanks to all the teams, SpaceX, NASA, ESA, JAXA, Roscosmos, and CSA for preparing us for this moment. I think we represent a good crew to be coming to the International Space Station. And I know for three of you, you've seen a lot of different crew come through, so we hope you teach us how to do things efficiently and effectively, and we're proud to join this team.
Yeah, I can only echo Jasmine's words. We are incredibly happy and proud to be on board the space station with Expedition 69. We're looking forward to an incredible mission. Personally, I'm looking forward to continuing the work of the last many ESA astronauts. I have a lot of European experiments and Danish experiments, and I want to thank ESA for all of their hard work in preparing to get me here, and also everyone involved in Denmark. This is going to be a fantastic mission. And finally, just a few personal words. Til Cecilie, Emily, Frederik og Jakob. Jeg håber, I ser med. Jeg ved ikke, om I er på vej tilbage til Houston fra Florida, men jeg håber, I nød opsendelsen, og jeg glæder mig så meget til at tale med jer snart og se jer igen. Hej, jeg elsker jer.
I'm very happy to be on the International Space Station, and I'm very excited to work in this brilliant international team. 日本の皆さん、仕事場である国際宇宙ステーションに着きました。この素晴らしい国際クルーの中で確実に仕事をしていきたいと思います。こうしちゃう
Yeah, it's possible. I'm glad that I didn't ruin this first time. Very excited to be here. It's so hard to explain the feeling of seeing these guys here floating so easily. Very excited, looking forward to long duration flight. And also, I want to point out again how important it is to work together in unity. And this is International Space Station. We are the most international SpaceX flight. Right now, you see 5 nationalities here, and we are looking forward to work together, continue ISS 79 and ISS 70 expeditions. Now a few words in Russian. Очень рад здесь быть. Спасибо большое. Всех очень приятно видеть. Здесь такая домашняя атмосфера. Неожиданно просторно после того, как мы летели на корабле. Очень благодарен всем, кто участвовал в подготовке к полету. Все агентства, и Роскосмос, НАСА, Европейское и Японское космическое агентство. Отдельное спасибо SpaceX за корабль, за то, как мы классно долетели. Неожиданно легко. Я ожидал, что будет тяжелее. И своему набору, вот то, что Сергей говорил, 2018 года, ждем всех здесь. Надеюсь, что будет такая передача эстафетной палочки безостановочная, в которой мы все окажемся скоро на МКС. Спасибо всем большое.
All right, welcome to the team, and great words. Thank you so much once again to the NASA team, the SpaceX team, and to all the agencies. What an amazing crew. We look forward to the next few months, and we're going to have a lot of fun together.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the event.
Thank you, Station. We are now resuming operational audio communications.
And there you have it, a truly international crew now aboard the International Space Station. It has been an incredible few hours, and it's so great to see Crew 7 on board safely. In our welcoming ceremony, each of them spoke about what it took to get to this moment to welcome 4 new astronauts to the space station, bringing the current population on board to 11 human beings as part of Expedition 69. We have been with you from the very beginning. We saw a spectacular launch at 2:27 a.m. Central on Saturday morning. Following liftoff, the first stage separated and came back to Earth, landing on the recovery ship, while Dragon separated from the second stage. We had a good nose cone deploy, and several major burns took place as Dragon made its way to the space station. Finally, Endurance and its 4-person crew docked to the space station at 9:58 a.m. Central and floated through the hatch at 9:58 a.m., officially bringing them to their new home for the next 6 months. It's been an incredible 24 hours watching this mission, and on behalf of SpaceX and NASA, thank you for watching it all unfold with us. The 7th rotational crew mission has reached the International Space Station and will spend approximately 6 months docked to the orbiting lab until it's time for the crew to come home. So with that, now that Crew 7 has successfully arrived to Space Station, be sure to follow NASA and SpaceX on social media for real-time updates throughout their mission. Thanks again for watching our coverage. Go NASA, go SpaceX, and go Crew 7. This is Mission Control Houston.